Along with Andrew Willett, I'm Eric Eaton. We're back here at the Pike Aquatic Center for coverage of the 2000 Indiana Swimming Long Course Championship sponsored by Speedo. We're going to move now to event 38, the men's 800-meter long course, 800-meter freestyle. There is 5 heats of time finals. The last heat will be swum with finals. We're underway, and we'll let you, Andrew, give you the lane assignments here for the first heat.
Heat number 1 features 2 Carmel swimmers for the Carmel Swim Club in lanes 4 and 5. Lane 4 is Ryan Roop. Lane 5 is Will Plum. Roop is 17, Plum is 19. And then in lane 6, only 3 people in this heat. 17-year-old Ethan Stanton for Michiana, the Stars. So, three swimmers in this heat, and just at the first 50 and about to get the first 100 of this 800-meter race underway.
So each of these races is 16 lengths of the pool, and it looks by the strategies of these men in this first heat, these 3 swimmers, as they don't look like they're going out too particularly hard. So it looks like they're probably their strategy is they're going to try and build into this race and try and, as we talked about earlier during the women's race, is try to progressively swim each 100 meters faster than the previous.
And that can be a challenge for sure, as with each 50 meters, each 100 meters, you're going to add that much more fatigue. So we will wish them luck with that plan, as out in lane number 5, Will Plum, the older Carmel swimmer, out to an early lead.
Meet records set in 2007, Fasenko, with a time of 8:06:14. That record actually predates my time with coverage of the with Indiana Swimming on the broadcast. So that's a pretty old record. And then we've got the association record set this year by El Kamash. It's 7:52.19. As we said, the fastest heat 5. The top seed is Griffin Polson from Munster, 8:27.20 his time. He'll swim tonight in the finals, along with the other 9 swimmers from the 5th and final heat.
And as Will Plum plunges out ahead, this is the slowest heat based off of seed time of all 5 heats, as they will each progressively get faster based off of seed time. And now 250 meters in.
One of the things you can watch too is as to whether or not to get a judge of when the swimmers are starting to build into their race strategies. They'll gradually start to build in more kick. You'll start to see more white water from the kick as the deeper we get into this race. Right now, not a lot of kicking going on by either of these 3 gentlemen out there.
Now, I would have presumed that there'd be a lot of kick the whole time, but in a race this long, does part of you just need to preserve?
Yeah, so it takes a lot of, I mean, the more you kick, one of the earliest signs of fatigue will be the legs. You want to try and conserve that leg energy towards deeper in the race if your strategy is to try to build into a race tempo and swim your fastest at the end of the race, which a lot of swimmers do in the distance events.
But then those arms need to be going full bore the whole time.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you'll see him add more kick off the wall, usually off the turns. But as far as the rest of the pool, it's going to be deeper into the race. You'll see them start to add more kick.
And we are about to reach the midway point of this first heat of the men's 800-meter freestyle, with Will Plum about to touch the wall at around 4.5 minutes. So about a 9-minute pace, so a lot better than his seed time coming in. And we'll see if he can have that progressively better last 400 meters. along with our two others.
And he's opened up a wide lead already. Will Plum has over the other two swimmers.
Ryan Roop closer in lane number 4, the bottom swimmer on your screen.
So just to give you kind of a reference point, the 10th seeded swimmer in the final heat is seeded with a time of 8:54.54. So some of these swimmers in these first 3 heats that we're going to see here, well, first 4 heats rather, going to want to try and shoot for under 9 minutes, right around 9 minutes or under 9 minutes, and figure they give themselves a chance to get in the top 10.
And that goes back to the conversation we were having earlier during the women's 800-meter freestyle. In that last heat, it was just one swimmer all out in front, all by her lonesome. And that's going to take a lot of self-motivation to just keep pushing against the clock.
And you'll see some of that from time to time here in these early heats of the 800, as we'll have swimmers get spaced out from each other. Not really a lot of racing going on.
And now down to the last 250 for Will Plum. And about to be 3/4 of the way through his race. He launches off the wall. And you talked about it earlier. Not only do some of these first few heat swimmers beat their seed time by quite a bit, the swimmers in the finals heat also need to go out and perform up to their standard that they had already set.
And particularly in some of these earlier heats, you'll see such wide differences between what the seed time was as to what they swam. The actual time is much quicker than the seed time, and it could be that in some occasions they did swim that much faster, but in other occasions they don't really swim this event that often during the regular season, so they kind of guessed off of a time based off another event, like maybe a 400-meter meet qualifying time. If you swim a certain qualifying time in the 400, it gets you into the 800, and so they kind of just maybe double that a little bit, and so it's not really accurate as to what they might swim.
Sure. And for Will Plum, he's entering his last 2 lengths, his last 100 meters, with about like he's a little bit slower than his first 400 and the second 400.
Let's see if we have a battle for second here in the last 100 between Roop and Stanton.
Roop has slowly but surely gained on Stanton in this battle for second.
Yeah, Stanton knows he's there now.
Eric, when you're in a race and you see maybe at the end of it you see someone right there, that gives you a little more push?
Yeah, it definitely does. I ran cross country, and that happens a lot in invitationals. You see 5, 6, 7 guys ahead of you, and in that last mile you think, I can get these guys, and it gives you a little extra motivation. Same applies to swimming.
And it's applied to each of these 2 swimmers, Roop and Stanton. As coming out on top was Will Plum with a time of 9:06.13. And followed up by Roop as the 2 Carmel swimmers did 1-2. And just a dominant victory in heat number 1 for Will Plum. Heading into heat number 2. just started as no one in lanes number 1 or number 10. But in lane 2, Jaden Peters, a 16-year-old for Greenfield Community. Number 3, Jude Bradden, another 16-year-old for Fishers. Lane 4, Peyton Bowman, a 16-year-old for Riverside Aquatics Club. Lane 5, Nathan Bradford, an 18-year-old for Fishers area, another Fishers swimmer. Lane 6, Mason Thornburg, a 16-year-old for Jasper Aquatics, the Wildcats. Lane 7, Cooper Van Driesch, a 16-year-old for South Bend. Lane 8, Aaron Uni for another 16-year-old for Avon. And for Brownsburg, in lane 9, Avery Newman, an 18-year-old.
So 7 of our, or 8 of our, looks like we've got how many?
8 out.
Yeah, 8. So 6 of the 8 here are 16-year-olds.
A younger field for heat number 2. And it's pretty even with the middle 3 through 8. As both the outer swimmers are struggling off the bat. With 150 meters down.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think they're too concerned about them. So it could be that they're going to stay within their own strategy here and hope that those rest of them come back to them by the end of the race.
And Eric, you see a lot of these swimmers keeping their head down for a large portion. What is the breathing strategy like for a race like this?
Well, in a longer race like this, I think you're going to see a lot of breathing, maybe every stroke or every other stroke, and that's I think what most of them are doing at this point. You get towards the latter stages of the race when they really want to start to sprint a little bit more, they may take a number of strokes without breathing. If in some of the sprint races like the 50, may only take a couple breaths the entire 50, or
Wow.
if not any.
50 meters. It seems like a long way to swim, but they are doing that 16 times, and through 5 of those 5 lengths, it's in lane 8 near the top of your screen. Aaron Uni from Avon atop the board and really pushing out the margin.
So you mentioned breathing. One of the things we'll also watch is when they get underneath the flags as they approach the turn, how many of these swimmers are breathing inside the flags, or is this where they're trying to gain some momentum by not breathing inside the flags before the flip turn? It looks like everybody's taking a breath or so inside the flags at this point. I think that'll change as we get deeper in the race.
And the decision to not take a breath, that just provide them a little, or they take less time to do this turn?
Yeah, I mean it takes, obviously that's more energy. You're to take a breath, turn your head, and you just generally go quicker when you're not breathing. And so the setting up for the turn, if they want to gain some time, they won't take a breath.
And so far, Uni out ahead, and the race for second and a race for third. Or fourth, excuse me. As lane 7 and lane number 5 and heat number 2, Van Driesch in 7 and Bradford in 5 are neck and neck behind Uni in lane number 8. With that race for fourth between lane 6 and lane 4, Thornburg in 6 and Bowman in 4. Bowman, excuse me. we've passed the halfway point and are 450 meters down. And not a lot of movement as the outside lanes continue to struggle. And Uni has separated himself from the pack. And it does look like most are getting that breath inside that flag.
Yeah, they're still doing that. We'll see if again if that changes here in the last couple 100 yards.
Because at
or 100 meters, excuse me.
Certain point, you're going to make your push. With
as they begin to attack the turns a little bit more to gain some time or ground if they're behind.
And it looks like in the push for second place over in lane 5, Bradford pushing out a little bit ahead of Van Dries and could potentially make a run at you.
Yeah, I think we may have a battle for the lead before this is over. It could be a three-way battle here.
Van Dries.
Lanes 5 and 7 here. Bradford and Van Dries trying to close in on Uni.
I'd like to see the split between Bradford and Van Dries. So it looks like Van Dries just a little bit quicker on that last 50 meters. And Uni's lead suddenly does not look so big.
So the question remains, did they use up too much energy to catch up to him and they don't have anything to go around him? We're going to find out.
And I would think at that point,
because when you get there, you still got to pass him.
I think at that point your adrenaline is pumping just a bit too much. As I think it's Bradford, yes, in lane 5, making his move. As we get set for the last 100 meters. After this turn, is Uni going to be able to hold on? Bradford got a solid push off the wall.
They're going to have a three-way battle, it looks like, down there at the far end with a 50 to go.
It's Van Dries now. Looks to be making his move. But it's Bradford still first off the wall. And Van Dries looks to be putting away Uni. Now your strokes no doubt have to be becoming a lot more powerful in the last 200, 100 meters.
See the kick is really the white water all from the kick here.
And
see no breathing inside the flags here at the finish.
And it was Bradford coming out on top. Van Dries had a faster last 50, but Bradford held on after coming back and taking the lead over Uni in the last 100 meters. And Bradford coming in first with a time of 9:14.21. Just ahead of Van Dries at 9:14.38.
And they were not able to eclipse the time of Will Plum from that previous heat. So Will maintains the lead as we'll go to the third heat.
Will Plum of the Carmel Swim Club at around a 9:06, I believe.
9:06.13, yes.
And looking good heading into heat number 3. As we still have in lane number 9. Newman from Brownsburg finishing up on what was an exciting finish in that one.
Yeah, that was a really exciting finish for an 800. You don't often see 800-meter races like that. Sometimes you get a two-way battle, but we had a three-way battle of the wall.
And there's just a lot of time for that race to be decided. So to be decided in the last 50, that was a good one to watch. As heat number 3 starts off with the dive into the pool in lane 1, Ford Crackle. Ford Crackle of Lake Central, 16-year-old. In lane 2, Grant Rubel, 15-year-old out of Fishers. Lane 3, Colin Cammett, a 15-year-old out of Carmel. Lane 4, Keaton Chop, a 16-year-old out of Fishers again for the Cardinal community. In lane number 5, Alexander Eddy, a 20-year-old. Lane number 6, Sam Lauer, a 22-year-old out of Concord. Lane number 7, Isaac Layton, a 15-year-old out of Franklin. And then at 3 17-year-olds, lane 8, Seth Blossom from Indiana Stars. Lane 9, Garrett Christ out of Center Grove. And from Fishers, Ben Russell in lane number 10. And there is the first 100 meters. Taking a look at lane number 2 and lane number 5 for this third heat between Grant Rubel and Alexander Eddy. But still a tightly contested one after the first 150 meters. See who can separate.
Yeah, who can separate and who might lay back a little bit and come from off the pace in the second half of the race too. Conserve some energy early and try to attack late.
Sure. But also in a race against the clock with Will Plum holding a 9:06 over everyone's head. And 200 meters down. And the top time of 2:10.
And so these swimmers, as we get to these next two heats, will know, as we talked about earlier, if you looked at the seed times from the final heat, with 8:54 being the slowest seeded time in that heat, they know if they can beat Will's time, they've got a good chance of maybe to place in the top 10.
And we talked about it for the women's 800, but the top 20 score, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. So lots of chances in the last heats of the 800. And what is the 4th day of competing?
It is. They started on Thursday with the 1500. Not everybody competed that day, though. Not everybody swims the 1500, but that was the first day of competition.
Take it the 1500 is the longest distance covered in a swimming pool most of the time.
Yeah, most of your international meets, and definitely here at the Senior Long Course Championships, that is the longest meet, or the longest event at the meet. That's the metric mile.
As out in front in lane number 5, but just narrowly above lane number 2, is Eddy, just over Rubel. Eddy in lane 5. So at a certain point, if you are, say, Rubel in lane number 2, Are you just sticking by Eddie and might try and race it out at the finish, or
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know that I know the answer to that, because you'd have to get inside his mind. Is he like, am I going out? Is he going as fast as he can right now? I got to just stay with this guy, or is he on his race strategy? And we'll find that out to probably later in the race.
and the race for third looks to be lanes 9 and 10. As Kristen lane 9 right alongside Russell in lane 10, as it looks like. Oh no, that is the race for fourth, excuse me.
Yeah, we got lots of good races going on here in this particular heat. And that's another thing is and that's where the coach can rely on their coach a little bit. If they get too concerned about battling that guy next to him, perhaps they should be more concerned about getting by that guy and moving up, challenging the other guys in front of them.
As it looks like Eddie has pushed a little ahead of Rubel at the 500-meter mark.
Yeah, if you get too concerned about battling somebody next to you, racing somebody, it might throw you off your race strategy. So that's the other part, is you just got to stay on your race strategy and not race. Particularly pay attention to racing in the early stages of a race like this, although we're starting to get deeper into this one now.
Eddie Alexander of Ball State, or Cardinal Community, is in first, and then Fishers is where Rubel is from, just behind him. I know from my time as a distance runner that if I could just stay behind a guy until maybe the last mile or so, that would help me not only with time but finishing the race.
We've seen some good performances by some of these Cardinal Community distance swimmers in the women's race in the preliminary heats prior to the fastest heats, which swims tonight in the finals. The top time is by a Cardinal Community swimmer, Marcelo Ribeiro, and now we're seeing a nice swim here in this heat, which is heat 3 of the men, by Alexander Eddy.
And taking a look at tonight's men's finals, it's Zachary Moody of Cardinal Community with an 8:53.2.
There's the bell.
One of those lower times.
Boy, and Eddie really came out of there off the surge off of that bell, too.
The bell signaling the last 100 meters.
See if any battles shape up over the last 75 meters or so here. Maybe 9 and 10 might develop into something here with Seth Blossom Garrett Kristen 9 and Ben Russell in 10.
As it looks like Garrett in 9 is pushing out ahead. You're going to see all the ticking they got left. His arms are pumping. A little less breathing, but the winner of this heat in the 800-meter freestyle is Alexander Eddy with an 8:54.04.
And that is a big time drop. He came in with a seed time of 9:17.99.
And the Cardinal Community runner, 20 years old, with a strong race in heat number 3.
Rubel with a 9:02.69 to finish second in lane 2, so that got him ahead of the time by Will Plum in that opening heat.
And a fairly competitive heat was heat number 3, as heat number 4 already underway, with Malcolm Slater in lane 1, 16-year-old for Zionsville. Jonah Rodenizer, 17 for Summit City. Nathan Grant in lane 3, another 17-year-old for Irish Aquatics. Lane number 5 has Aaron Frollo, a 19-year-old for Fishers. Lane number 7 has Brady Campbell, a 16-year-old for Franklin. Fishers again in lane number 8, this time with Tyler Schwartfager, 17-year-old. Lane number 9, Thomas Hill, a 16-year-old for Summit City. And in lane number 10, Nick Viola, a 17-year-old for Fishers.
And this is our second fastest seeded heat. Only one heat remains. It swims tonight in final, so let's see if we see some good swims out of this heat.
And through 100 meters, that's lane number 5, Aaron Frollo for Fishers out ahead. As you are missing lanes 4 and lane 6 in this one. So Frollo on an island in the middle of the pool. Frollo is one of 3 Fishers swimmers in this heat. A couple of Summit City swimmers as well. As Frollo finishes first 25% of this race. A push off the wall. And a 2:04.44 on pace for around an 8:20. Well, we'll see if he can hold that up.
So you can see some of the difference in the kicking early in this race. You can see in lane 1 here we have Malcolm Slater using much more of the kick in the non-turn portion of the pool than the rest of the field at this point. Malcolm is battling in for second there with the swimmer in lane 3, which is Nathan Grant.
But it's been Aaron Frollo out to a huge lead. The 19-year-old out of Fishers. And then almost in a row, 7, 8, 9, 10, all hitting the wall. With 7 in the lead on down the line.
Yeah, and that battle over there, that because those individuals are so close, let's see if anybody might try to do some drafting over there. Get next to that lane line and see if they can conserve some energy, almost like we see in IndyCar or NASCAR drafting. That takes place in swimming too.
Eric, how does that work?
Well, it's all about airflow. You get right next to somebody, the air comes off the individual, and it helps you propel you a little bit. So that's you're conserving energy that way.
Not a bad strategy, as it looks like.
It doesn't look like any of the individuals in those far lanes are doing it because you'll see them get right over next to the lane line if they try to do that.
Yeah. Looks like they are all concerned with their own race. As there's 7, 8, 9, 10. Campbell, Schwartfager, Hill, and Viola all hitting the wall, one after the other. As they're all looking for fourth. And drafting like that, that's probably more so used in a distance race than.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something you're going to see in a distance race. You're not going to see that in a sprint race.
Yeah, I don't imagine that would work great for you.
Yeah, Aaron Frollo, he's not concerned about any drafting at this point. He's concerned about his own strategy. He doesn't have any to draft anyway, and he's going out on his race strategy just to get a time, and we'll see if he gets it.
Like I said, on pace for just under 8 minutes, 20 seconds after the first 200. He's about to hit the wall for 550, and we'll wrap up his third 200 meters ahead of the final 200 meters.
It's still quite a battle over there, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Those four individuals have been like that really since the start.
And it's just down the line. 7 hits, then 8, then 9, then 10. Campbell leading the way for fourth.
You know, and then we've got that battle for second. That's pretty much been going on the whole race too. In lanes 3 and lanes 1 and 3, Slater and Grant.
And you pointed out Slater's feet. He's really kicking a lot. You can see the white in lane 1 from his fits. Do you think that could negatively affect him?
Yeah, I don't know. It could be a reason why Grant's able to stay with him a little bit, because he's kicking a lot harder than Grant is, but he's not really pulling away from Grant.
And Grant might be taking some of that strategy, just holding on next to.
We're going to have the
Slater.
bell coming up here for our leader, Frollo.
Frollo. As the bell rings, he knows he's got 2 lengths left. And he came in at a 7:24.96.
There's the bell for Slater in 1 and for Grant in 3, which has been a great battle the entire race for second in this heat.
And 7, 8, 9 still together, but 10 falling a bit behind.
And they dropped 10. Kind of like you'll see a distance, a 2-mile race or 1-mile race, a guy gets dropped. That's what happened in that battle.
As here comes Slater, finish it off. Let's see his time. Coming through. 30.7 for that final 50, and finishing with an 8:27.42.
Yeah, I think that time is going to be a factor in our top 10 placing for sure, and maybe for the win. 8:27.42.
Just slightly above his seed time coming in.
Boy, almost a dead heat between Slater and Grant. Who got that?
And it looks like it was Slater coming through first with an 8:50.89, followed by Grant with an 8:50.97, 0.08 of a second between second and third.
After 800 meters to be that close is pretty impressive.
As we were talking about earlier, there's a lot of time for a race like that to be decided, and it came down to the finish.
Yeah, that was a pretty exciting race. We had the dominating swim, an impressive swim by Aaron Frollo, the 19-year-old from Fishers area, 8:27.42. That's going to be your time to beat tonight going into finals. The final Heat 5 swims tonight in finals here the final night of competition at the 2021 Indiana Swimming Senior Long Course Championships, sponsored by Speedo. We're going to step away. We'll come back with finals coverage. Final night of coverage that will begin. Competition begins on at 5:30. We'll be on the air about 5 minutes before that. That'll wrap up our coverage here of the men's 800-meter freestyle swims. One more to go tonight. For Andrew Willett, I'm Eric Eaton saying so long, everyone, and thanks for watching.